Today's News Talk Radio, TNT, with Joseph Arthur and his Technicolor Dreamcast.
Welcome back to Joseph Arthur's Technicolor Dreamcast. I recently went on a small little run of dates, and I wound up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, of all places. I never really toured there back in the day, and so it was interesting to go to new terrain, so to speak. And one of the greatest things about being on the road is the people that you meet along the way, and the level of talent is sometimes mind-blowing. And my next guest was like that for me. I was watching him do his thing before I went on, and it was like watching somebody with the skill level of Bruce Springsteen, and I'm not even being hyperbolic. Is that the right word? I'm not exaggerating. He's amazing. His name is Jono Manson. Here's what No Depression had to say. Manson attacks the high art of low-rent songcraft with a paid assassination's precision. Jono Manson is a prolific singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, and producer who started his first band at age 7 and never looked back. During a storied career spanning over 5 decades, he has played everywhere from the local Dive to Madison Square Garden. Jono, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. Like I was saying right before we went on, it's such a great pleasure to see you again so soon, because I felt such a great brotherhood with you when we got to do that show together just a few nights back. And I was sad when we had to part company. So when I saw your invite to do this, I was very, very, very happy and very excited.
Yeah, well, it felt real special that night. There was just something in the air. I think it was the way you started off things. And then my good friend Grady Haas played, and then I came on. And it was just an awesome night of music, and I think the people really appreciated it.
They definitely did.
Yeah. So, in talking to you before the show, you told me that you were a New Yorker, which I lived in New York for 25 years and relocated to Tempe, Arizona. You're now in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I want to go through New York because we have some other things in common regarding New York, but what brought you to Santa Fe, New Mexico?
Well, the long answer short, moves like that happen for love or money, and there wasn't no money involved, and but I was, I grew up in New York and came up, in the playing music there, and spent the first several decades of my musical life there. And things were starting to shift, kind of in the scene, and I was ready for a change of venue, and I was also on the road a lot. So it increasingly was becoming less important where I made my home base, because all throughout, for example, starting from the late 70s all through the 80s, I was a gigging musician in New York. I mean, there were years where I would play more than 365 gigs a year without leaving the island of Manhattan. That was before Brooklyn was happening, but that scene was starting to change, and I was on the road more. So my girlfriend at the time, suggested that we try moving out here, and I was totally ready for a change. And I came out here and found a great community and really cool quality of life. And I've been here now on and off, mostly on for 32 years. So I guess I like it, because I'm still here.
What was the adjustment like when you first moved? I'm about almost 3 years into my Tempe, Arizona chapter. And, like I said, 25 years, mostly on New York, and also Brooklyn. When I first moved out here, it was Apache Junction in the desert. I was going on barefoot runs in the desert. I used to love to run in Brooklyn. And so there was definitely an adjustment period. New York has that street energy. There's so much emotion that you get from people just on the street. And out here, it's a driving culture. So it's more isolated in a way. And also, obviously, culturally, it's not New York. I mean, nowhere is other than New York. So how is it to adjust to Santa Fe for you?
Well, that's I think for me, a multi-layered question in terms of, I think one of the things that happened to me when I moved out here is I started to become resensitized in a lot of ways. I mean, I notice now when I go back to New York, I notice the noise. I notice the frenetic energy of the city in a way that I was completely oblivious to when I was living there and in sort of entrenched in it. And I found myself, during the first year or so of living here, sort of unwinding a little bit, sort of personally, and in terms of one of the things that happened to me as a musician when I moved here, when all through my, childhood and teens and early, in 20s and into my early 30s, I had always been in bands, and played in ensembles and been singer in bands and guitar player in bands. And I was always playing in ensemble situations, but necessity is the mother of invention. And I saw that if I wanted to work locally here, it was a good idea for me to develop sort of my singer-songwriter thing, and be able to play and represent myself by myself, which, by the way, is something that you do masterfully. You can really hold it down on your own, which is a valuable skill to have, and to have the songs feel full and have the arrangements be full and or implied by the energetic way you're playing, is a skill that I didn't really possess before I moved out here. But there was a lot of work for me if I was able to cultivate that. So I did. And it also made me start writing more songs and writing in a different way than I was when I was writing for rock and roll bands all the time, So it opened up a lot for me. And when you move to, I don't know, Tempe is a bigger city than Santa Fe. When I moved here, had barely, I think, 65,000 people or something, so it's a smaller community. And when you come from a scene like I came from in New York, where there was so much collaboration, so many places to play, so many musicians sharing ideas, openly and generously, you move to a smaller community and there can be sort of more of a sense of competition because there's less to go around and people feel more territorial about work. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life with the local music community, like, someone feeling jealous because you got that gig. It was never that way in the scene that I came from. So that took a little adjusting. Just like every place, the scene here has ebbed and flowed, but there's a lot of great musicians that live here, and they aren't necessarily the people you'll see playing at the corner bar, every night. But so many people move here for similar reasons than I did, and also just because it is such a great vibe here, that it didn't take long before I found a great community of musicians, and also, people to play with live and also in the studio. And, I feel at home here.
That's amazing. Yeah, you said a lot there.
I tend to digress.
I love it. No, it's interesting because what you're saying about writing for solo performance and it changed your songwriting. I guess I would take from that maybe you focus more on story and lyrics, and also like your guitar playing. And we want to hear some of it real soon. You do the finger picking really well. I mean, I just when I watched you, I've been doing this long enough to just recognize, real recognizes real, Jono. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a real one, and so was it like that? Did you get more into the lyrical content? Did you get more into the finger picking guitar?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was exposed. When I moved out here, it was just before the internet age. It was the very early 90s. So it was still during a time when there were regional scenes. Now everybody can access everything on their phone, instantaneously. But back then, the whole sort of Southwestern school of singer-songwriters and all the Texas guys and the Guy Clarks and Towns Van Zants and all those kind of are people that I really wasn't, that whole kind of music I wasn't really exposed to that much coming up in New York. You mentioned Springsteen, I mean, if somebody liked you in a bar in New York, they'd say, "You sound like the boss," and someone likes you we're doing a bar gig in Santa Fe, they'll tell you that you sound like Townes Van Zandt, and, and I remember the first time I played a gig in Santa Fe, some drunk cowboy came up to me and he said, "You'll play any towns?" And I was like, "Well, I'm playing your town now." And I really didn't know what he meant. So, back then, it was at the very tail end of the era where like bands could have regional hits, and there were people who were super well known in one part of the world, but virtually unknown elsewhere. So I got exposed, to a lot of different styles of music that not like I had never heard before, but got more in depth with that. And definitely those things crept into my music. I'm still a rock and roller, but imagery and ways of playing, because of the openness out here, definitely changed my writing.
Yeah, it's so funny you're talking about local heroes, because I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, and Michael Stanley Band in Cleveland, Ohio was massive in Cleveland. They were super regional, but they were huge. I mean, they were just as big as any big band, but only really in Cleveland. I guess they probably were big other places, but same deal as what you're saying. That's awesome. So, okay, so the one conversation we got into before, you said you're getting ready to go on tour with Joan Osborne, and
that's true.
And I worked with Joan Osborne back in the day. Right after the Relish album, I helped produce the follow up to that with T-Bone Burnett was involved in that for a while, and he brought me into that and introduced me to Joan. And I was a little young and out of my mind at that time. But anyway.
And now you're older.
Now I'm older and out of my mind. Exactly. But you said that you actually were playing the is it the Continental Bar on 13th Street?
No, it was Nightingale.
Oh, Nightingale. That's right. Nightingale on 13th Street. And that's a famous Joan Osborne story. I mean, you sort of discovered her in a way.
Well, I can't say that, but I did meet her at the very inception of her career. I mean, I met her actually before she'd ever played a gig, and I was a member of one of her very early bands. When she was just kind of doing blues covers, and we brought her around. Me and a group of other musicians who were playing in that scene at the time sort of took her under our wing and brought her around, because she was a great singer. Even then, she'd gone to New York to go to film school. Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, no, her voice is like glass, like beautiful glass or something. I don't know how to describe it, but
and she's still great, and she's one of those singers too that as she gets older, it's changing and becoming a little bit of a different thing, but I think even more beautiful.
Interesting.
And so I've known her since the very beginning, and we collaborated a little bit, like kind of before the Relish thing, because that's around the time that I moved out of New York. Because I remember I came back to New York in 1993 or early 94 to work on an album of mine, and that's when she was recording Relish. And so we were very close and we both lived in Brooklyn in Park Slope at the time, and I had a studio in my apartment, so she would come over and gangs of us would get together and record all kinds of stuff, and we'd all sing on each other's recordings the way we all do still, and so I've known her since then, and we've collaborated on and off, and it just so happens that a few things sort of right now came together during the same period. I'm flying tonight to the East Coast to rehearse and then do this gig with her and some other people from our old scene. Craig Dreyer, who's a great sax and keyboard player. John Popper from Blues Traveler, who was also, those guys also started out their career like opening for other bands at Nightingale, and Mondo Cane, Mondo Perso, and all these little dive bars that were happening in New York in the mid-late 80s. And we've all stayed in touch and worked together on things over the years. And so we're doing this sort of put together band thing for a festival in upstate New York. And then I'm going to Italy to play a handful of gigs with Joan, because it's a long story I won't bore you with now, but I have a thing over there. And we've been talking for years about doing something over there. So it's all finally happening.
When you say I have a thing over there, that's music speak for I got a fan base that's rabid for me in Italy. Am I wrong, Jono? Is that what you were implying with that?
that is a thing that I have cultivated. Yes, over the years, it's a seed which I planted and managed to bring to fruition.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been working over there since the late 90s, so for 25 years or so, both as an artist and as a producer. I work with a lot of Italian singer-songwriters and bands. And so, as you know, it's sort of become a second home for me. And you can do worse, than to have a place like that where you're welcomed, have work, and people who are excited to come and hear you play.
Yeah, you can do much worse. I have that in France. France embraced me early on before anyone else, and I used to tour 26 city tours just in France. I'm getting ready to go to Paris day after tomorrow, actually. Actually, wait. Anyway, yeah.
You have to cut this short.
No. It's just I just had an inside joke in my mind. That was it. It was like, I don't know what it was. Anyway, I get it though. That is great when you cultivate something like that and you can go over there. I just got recently just got an Italian booking agent looking for some dates for me over there. So through Willie Nile, you probably know Willie Nile, right?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Is it Andrea? The guy,
Caesar.
the agent, who he is?
Caesar.
Oh, Cesare.
Yeah.
Cesare Carugi.
Is that really a guy?
That's a guy. That's who it is.
That's who it is.
That's who books Willie over there.
Oh, yeah. It's Willie's guy. Yeah. Okay, that's how you say his name. I just have his name in WhatsApp and stuff. So
Caesar. It's the same thing. It's spelled the same way, but they say Cesare.
Oh, okay. I get it. All right. I'm slow on the uptake right now, Jono. You're making me nervous.
He's a good dude.
Is he? Okay, good. Yeah. So that's awesome. All right, man. Well, I want to talk more about your New York life, and let's hear a song right after these words on TNT.
TNT's Jason Burmis.
And they're all saying that Joe Biden is going to pardon his son. Now, that may be the case. I'm not exactly sure. Joe Biden certainly could, in theory, pardon his son. But, I mean, as far as knowing what's going on, we're going to be discussing a lot of Joe Biden and Hunter today. Joe Biden didn't know where he was yet again on the lawn of the White House. It was very clear while everybody was celebrating Juneteenth. And, Biden was a big Juneteenth guy back when he was conscious, everybody. He looks to the left of him. He has no idea who that guy is, where he is, what's going on.
Jason Burmis on today's News Talk, TNT. A better business tip from TNT Radio. News Talk Radio listeners are some of the most active and involved listeners of any format. TNT Radio listeners rely on TNT Radio often as their primary source of information. They trust TNT Radio and are highly engaged with the content. If you'd like more information about advertising on TNT Radio, simply fill out your details on our contact page and we'll be in touch. To find out more, go to tntradio.live.
In a democracy, the majority vote rules. But in most democracies, you can only vote for change every 3 or 4 years. To understand what people want, governments and political parties use focus groups. These focus groups can include as little as 20 people. Australia is a country of over 25 million people. Does making decisions based on 20 people sound fair to you? Have your say. Be heard in between elections. Download the 4 My Say app now. That is number 4, My Say.
Turn on Alexa and ask her to play
TNT.
Turning on anything else usually requires dinner and conversation, dressing up and brushing your teeth, and I'm already tired.
This is today's News Talk,
TNT. And we're back with Joseph Arthur's Technicolor Dreamcast, and my special guest is Jono Manson. So the other night we were talking about singer-songwriters and keeping it dynamic. One of the tricks that I discovered on this last little leg was going completely off mic. So I have my loop space station, which can be super aggressive and distorted, and I can solo and stuff. And I got my stomp board, and then I can straight ahead singer-songwriter acoustic through the PA. But on one of the gigs, my battery died on my acoustic, and so I just unplugged and sang into the room. And I started walking around, and I realized that the people were really drawn in at that moment. So I just started doing that anyway on the other gigs. And I was doing it with Lou Reed's song Coney Island Baby, because that one is particularly, I don't know, it's almost like musical theater. I mean, the story is so strong in that song that it became a little bit like musical theater, but it was a way to make the performance more dynamic. So I'm looking forward to explore that. But before I did Coney Island Baby, you played a song called Coney Island Serenade, which definitely perked my ears and my attention because of Coney Island Baby. You'll play that one for us now, I guess, right, Jono?
I will.
Nice.
I will.
Hey, can you give us? Can you lead us into it? What's it about?
Well, the song is about. I wrote it for my older brother, David, who unfortunately has been dealt kind of a lousy hand in life. He's suffered and struggled with mental illness, like since he was in his late teens, schizophrenia. And he's one of the most, brilliant, intelligent, loving people that you could possibly imagine. And but he's had a rough time. But this song, I never really had a way to sort of express our story as brothers in a song until this idea came to me. And it's sort of about the time when we were kids, like before everything kind of went south. And Coney Island for us represented sort of an idyllic place in the world. And that's the way it was for so many kids who grew up in New York, especially during that time in the 1960s, was sort of like the heyday, Still cool.
Yeah,
anyway,
and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Coney Island of the Mind. Coney Island just sounds good. It's a poetic sound, right?
Yeah. And Woody Guthrie lived there, and, so.
Yeah.
All right, here I go. We played hide and seek round the corner of our street, but I never dreamt you'd steal away so long. I still see a trace of that smile on your face, but now it's 50 years since you've been gone. Down the boardwalk you would glide, your head held high with pride, the racket of the cards clipped in between. Sometimes I feel numb to what you have become, but I recognize the places that we've been. So let me take you back in time to the last stop on the line, back to where our memories were made. I will hold your hand as we walk along the sand and sing this Coney Island Serenade. Don't go up to the country, 'cause you might just lose your way. There ain't no place out there for a city boy to play. There's no medicine gonna bring you back again. There ain't no silver bullet for this beast. I know you're still there, locked away somewhere, and in the end we all will be released. Let me take you back in time to the last stop on the line, back to where our memories were made. I will hold your hand as we walk along the sand and sing this Coney Island Serenade. Sing this Coney Island Serenade.
It just doesn't get any better than that, man. That's got me feeling. My eyes are starting to get full on that one, and the melody's so jovial, but the lyrical content and the explanation before just hits you just so deep, man. It's so good.
Yeah, because the song is it's not really sad. You know, it is sad, but it's heavy, but it's not sad, and it's also the nostalgia of those times is real, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had a dream a couple nights ago that my brother and I my grandparents used to live up in Westchester County. And, you know, they moved out of there in the late 1970s to this house. And it's so weird. I had this dream that my brother and I went there and knocked on the door and asked the people who were living there now to let us in so we could walk around the house. Cause that was another place we used to go, like for a couple of weeks in the summer. My parents and and my brother and I would go up to visit my grandparents. And there was a little bedroom where we both used to sleep. And it was such a weird thing. And I woke up and it all seemed so real. You know, it was real. It was like, wow, we went and the guy was super nice. And it's funny because the guy who owned the house looked just like my brother, in my dream, you know, and those things are real, you know. I don't know. I digress again, but you know, it's true that there's a comfort in that.
Yeah. What's the comfort in that? Like, anytime anybody brings up a dream, I think of the Mitch Hedberg bit where he goes like, I just want to get some rest. And all of a sudden it's like, I got to build a go-kart with my landlord. But what comfort does that give you? Because dreams can go one of two ways. You know, they can give you comfort or they can freak you out.
Yeah. I think in this case, the comfort it gave me was like a sense that you know, they say like in real life, you can't go back to a different place in time or perhaps a happier place in time, you know, but sometimes in dreams you can, you know, and sometimes just in your own memory you can. And so to me, that's a comforting thing. You know, sometimes things that the unseen is more real than what's right in front of you, you know,
oh, yeah.
And that's comforting. But yes, sometimes dreams can be very disconcerting. I had a dream last night that I was playing a festival and, we brought some amps because we weren't sure if they were going to have the back line we needed. And then they told us, then we realized they had everything we needed on stage. So then we put the amps in this shed. It was like an outdoor thing. And then we left and forgot them there and someone stole them, you know, and I went back and it was late at night and I was with a flashlight walking across this field trying to find my amplifier. See that's the Mitch
Hedberg one. You got to do a task.
There's no comfort in that at all.
Yeah. The line about, I loved how you sang about, you identified it, as a beast. And the line that got my eyes heavy was someday we will all be released, because it's just like universal, and it encapsulates like the whole sort of the sadness of the human condition, basically, I guess, or just the depth of it, you know? Yeah.
To one extent or another, life is suffering, you know, and it's joy, but it's also suffering, and some of us experience it more intensely than others, but we all, and it's not, you suffer not because you're bad, it's because it's just the nature of human existence, right? Mm-hmm. So, and there's some people who are bad. It just maybe deserve to suffer a little bit more, but I won't go into that.
I think no one's good, Jono. I think that's what Jesus had to say about that. But even he himself, he said he wasn't good. I have schizophrenia in my family as well. I have a cousin with that condition, and I'm wondering if you correlate your gift of songwriting and expression along those similar lines. Like maybe it's a more beautiful expression of that condition, or people that fall into schizophrenia, it's a sort of perverted expression of a similar gift in a way. It seems like schizophrenia is like next door neighbors with being gifted, because you're hearing voices. I'm sure when you write, isn't it a similar thing? I mean, aren't you being suggested lyrics from some source?
Sure. I think there's definitely something to that. Everyone is somewhere on some kind of spectrum. And, I definitely think that if you're able to tap into that thing, whatever it is, you're right. It's right next door to just on this side of some kind of border where, you get to when people are quote unquote ill, it's because they no longer can control it or step away from it, and I've never really thought about it in those terms exactly, but I think you're right that there is definitely a connection to, we were talking the other night at the gig about songs that seem to come to you, almost as if they're a gift from someplace else, and some people say that you're just the antenna and that you're channeling this. Some people adhere more to the theory that these are subconscious thoughts that are inside you fermenting, and when they're ready, they come out. But one way or the other, it's a magic that happens that we're not in control of, and so in the case of my brother and perhaps your cousin, these are people who can't control it, and sometimes the dreams they have are the more often than not the very disconcerting times, and they're in a waking dream that it's not good, but yeah, I think you're right.
Being like a journeyman songwriting, when you're a songwriter and a lifelong musician, and I want to talk about your studio too. If you're not a household name in this business, which most of us just aren't, I know it's shocking that we aren't, but let's face it. I mean, we're household names in certain households.
Yes.
But my point,
I'm a household name at my house.
Right. I'm a household name. No, I don't even think I am in my own house. Tell me about the difficulty of that and how you've survived so long and you've kept an effervescent spirit, because this industry takes a lot of people down. How have you remained enthusiastic about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. There are times where I do feel discouraged. I think that's only natural. But generally speaking, I've managed to stay enthusiastic but I mean, first off, I've been fortunate. I consider myself lucky that there's lots of people like yourself and myself who are not household names, but have been able to navigate this business and this world to the point where we've formed partnerships and created allies with different people and been able to have people who've championed our creative work at times when we've really needed it. And I think, knowing what I do know about you, I think the same holds true for you, that you've had people who've believed in you when you've needed it and given you help in different ways, even if it's only morally, moral support for morale, moral support. But so I've had enough of that in my life to give me sense of purpose, and the things like when someone writes you that email and says, that song that you sang really pulled me back from the edge, and I've gotten those things, I've gotten those kind of messages at times where I was feeling pretty dark myself and think, well, shit, that's what it's really about, and I've managed by hook or by crook to survive financially. I mean, and part of it is that I do a lot of things. I'm here in my studio, and I've diversified over the years, and just like you have, I gig, I can produce, I can co-write with people, I can do different things. None of each of those things individually necessarily is enough for me to get through, but combined has created a career for myself that it certainly is never uninteresting. That's for sure. Even if it's nerve wracking, I mean, I'm 63 years old and I still, like, if I have an empty swath on the calendar a couple months out, I can't help the knee jerk reaction of going, oh my God, I'm going to dry up and blow away. Even though I know in my mind, intellectually, that's not going to happen. I'm going to have work, but that, that never goes away,
Mm-hmm.
But I love music. I love making music. I love helping other people to make music, and wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, what is it? Give us this day our daily bread. Sometimes you want that daily bread to be like, I definitely have bread for a year out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It sucks when the daily bread really is just the daily bread, Yeah,
I don't mind getting my portion in small bits every day, but I want to know for a fact that it's coming. That the oven, that the bakery is baking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's comforting. All right, let me take a quick break. We'll be right back with Jono Manson right after these words on TNT.
Sometimes a car comes along that changes everything, with innovations never thought possible and features that make you wonder, how did people survive without this? This is that time, and this is that car. This is the world's first DWB. Equipped with transparent doors to eliminate reasonable suspicion, whatever that means. A 10 and 2 steering wheel that keeps hands visible at all times. We remove the glove box so there's no confusion about what the driver is reaching for. With a touch of a button, the ultrasonic biometric scanner displays the license and registration of the driver to ensure contactless exchange of information. With no trunk, nothing can be concealed, so therefore, there is nothing to search and seize. To ensure you will never be mistaken for breaking the speed limit, we've installed limited edition airless tires. And we removed the engine because, honestly, why risk it? DWB, the first vehicle of its kind, where the safety feature is the car itself.
I have a feeling these are the suspects in question. The two occupants look like the people involved in the armed robbery. I'm approaching the vehicle. Request backup. The driver matches the description because of the wide-set nose.
Joseph Arthur and his Technicolor Dreamcast on today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back to Joseph Arthur's Technicolor Dreamcast. I'm here with the fantastic Jono Manson. What a name, Jono. I've never met a Jono before, Jono.
We're a small club. I've met some others. There's actually it's like a skateboard kid in New Zealand, I think, like a famous skateboarder that's named Jono Manson.
Really? Oh,
so
no.
It's the same, we have the same name.
That's too bad.
It's okay. He's cool,
Yeah.
I was never good at like the hippie arts, like skateboarding or frisbee or hacky sack or any of that stuff. So someone with my name is good at it, so it's good.
All right. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I've never been I got into skateboarding. Lately, Grady Haas, a.k.a. Lance Davis, he loves Frisbee golf, and I've gone with him a couple times. But, like, he'll throw it, and he's done this a lot, Frisbee golf, right? And it's like he'll just get tons of distance. And then I'll do my level best, and it'll go, like, 1/4 of the this it's a little tough on the ego, but if you don't try, you don't get good. So another song you played the other night that really struck me was this song about how you're not a Christian, but then you were espousing Christian values in it. And I was also kind of harking back to your brother a bit too, and wondering if you believe that our battle is with principalities rather than flesh and blood, and if you perceive that mental illness to be a spiritual condition, or do you think it's a result of genetics and the dysfunctional childhood, or psychological only? But that's sort of another question. But I definitely want to hear that Christian song again. So maybe touch on both of those things in setting this tune up.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question to the best I can, just sort of mulling it over at the moment, I think that the two things are, the body and spirit, and what, things that can be explained scientifically or medically or spiritually are, they run parallel to one another, I believe. I think that there are, whatever chemical imbalances and this and that, but I believe that I consider myself to be a pretty spiritual person. I don't adhere to one single ideology necessarily in particular, but the song that you mentioned I wrote is called "The Christian Thing," and then we have an expression in certainly in American English, that's that when someone does the right thing, it's sometimes people would say that's the Christian thing to do,
Yeah.
And what is the Christian thing to do, and how has the term Christianity been in the hands of certain people perverted to mean the exact opposite, and to me, I've read the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and I've read the Quran, and I've read holy scriptures of other peoples and other religions, and it always comes back to loving kindness and how you live your life. That really is the thing, not necessarily what ideology you espouse. So I wrote this song that kind of to expand on my own feelings about that. And it actually came out of an exchange I had with someone I don't even know on social media. That can be really good for that sort of thing. Somebody who was, saying that I couldn't possibly be, a good person unless I accepted this, and this. And I said, well, what about how I treat other people and how I live my life? Can't you check off some boxes because of that? And so I went back to the drawing board and wrote this song.
And you also should have just told them, hey, if you're judging and condemning, you're committing the ultimate sin right there. That's right, the first one. That's the knowledge of good and evil. That's the apple. That's that dirty apple. Say you're biting the dirty apple again.
Quit biting the dirty apple.
There's a song there. Anyway. Let's hear it. What's this one called? Let's write that, the dirty apple. But okay, what's this one called?
It's called The Christian Thing.
All right.
I have been to Bethlehem and up on Calvary, but I don't believe a son of God was born and died for me. Still I have read your Bible, Old Testament and New. Between the lines I have divined the Christian thing to do. I seek no prize in heaven, nor fear the fires of hell. I will not join the holy war against your infidel. I will fight for freedom, for happiness and truth. I will soldier on for peace, the Christian thing to do. And when my brother's homeland is torn apart by war, I will not leave him starving outside the golden door. I will open wide the gates and let him pass right through, and love him as I would myself, the Christian thing to do. Love is my salvation. I need no second birth. I still believe in paradise here upon the earth. With conscience as my compass, my heart will know the route, and I'll strive to walk in righteousness, the Christian thing to do.
Another banger, man. What a banger. You lose the Christians right in the first line or the second, I forget.
But that's the thing.
You know, you lose them, but well, I'm a Christian and you didn't lose me. But I'm an open, you know, I like other people's takes on life. I don't have, you know, and plus I am aware of the dirty apple. So I'm like, I ain't judging anyone. What do I know?
And also,
I know what works for me. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, cool. I can appreciate that song, you know.
I appreciate that you can appreciate it, and to me that means that you are a true Christian, because it's not about judging. And the fact that I know what you're saying, because the first, you know, I say I've been to Bethlehem and up on Calvary, which I have. You know, I've been to those places, and then I say, but I don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. You know, and I you know.
Them are fighting words, Jono.
Yeah, I know, because they're fighting words for. But then I go. So, I hear you, and I think a lot of people would might recoil.
I can't get emotional over somebody else's opinion about anything. I've lost that ability. Like, I don't know if it's the last few years, but it's just I have zero emotional response about anything that somebody else thinks. It's just it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, and also my point is that if you allow yourself to say, okay, what's he going to, now what? You know, now what's this guy got to say? And if you then allow yourself to be open enough to listen to what I'm really saying in the song.
It's like beautiful.
That it's not a matter of talking the talk, it's walking the walk.
Yeah, no, it's clear. It's really good. But the one line that is questionable to me as well is the part that you don't need no second birth, right? Is that really true? I mean, if we really break it down, because don't you think life is a journey from being
it's like your song the other night, we only get one life, unless maybe not. Maybe
right. But don't you think life is a journey from like sort of liberation of your ego, and that perhaps being born again is to stop identifying so much with your ego and your thoughts and fears and worries, and then be born into, like, when you forgive, that you're born into presence and into the moment. I mean, into sort of a union with God. Yeah. I mean, do you really? I mean, I feel like you have had rebirths, is what I mean.
I have. And yes, I've probably had more than a second, third, or fourth. You know, in terms of moments in that where you feel all the things you just described. So yeah, you're right. Maybe
still a good line. Still a good line. Still a good line, dude.
And it rhymes with earth, you know.
Yeah, no,
it's like I made the right. You know, I still believe in paradise here upon the earth. You know? So, but you're right. But basically, the reason I sang that line is because there are those who say, you know, lest ye be born again. You know, in the traditional sense, then you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And I believe, and that's why I say paradise can be right here. And I think that echoes what you just said. You can be reborn by, your ego dies, and then what's next? If something dies, and there's a rebirth after that, you know. So. You know, I think we're in vicious agreement about this.
We are in vicious agreement, and that's the name of our collab album, Vicious Agreement, dude. No,
Dirty Apple by Vicious Agreement. Come on,
dude. That's platinum right away.
Shit.
You know what's funny? Like Dylan has that. Dylan self-references in like a hip hop artist when he goes, "Riding sad-eyed lady of the lowland for you." Like he does the self-reference bit. You could do that when you go like, you know, I sang about I don't need no second birth, but I've been rethinking it. Maybe I have been born again. That would be another writing prompt. Yeah. I'm not saying do it, but it's a good idea. Okay,
I'm in vicious agreement with myself. But I need you for that.
Yeah, no, vicious agreement. That's it. So, we don't have but a few minutes left, but you're a studio operator. And when you said, yeah, you record on tape still, I was like, yeah, this even before you played, I was like, oh, this is a real one. Right. And so what's it like operating a studio? And are you I guess you've had Grammy winners all the way down to local bands, or not down, but all the way sideways to local bands. And, and everything in between. What's that journey like? Real quick.
It's a tough racket, running and my studio is a pretty big facility. You know, it's like I'm in the control room here now, and it can be challenging. But again, as we said earlier, it keeps things interesting. And I do work with all kinds of people at all levels of ability and career, and from all over the world. In Santa Fe, one of the cool things about Santa Fe, it's a small town in and of itself, but people like to come here. You know, it's known as a place of art, and so bands and artists like to come here and work. And I've had my studio in one location or another for decades here, but I've been in this location for the past 9 years, and this building was built as a studio around 1989, 1990, sort of at the end of the golden age of like the big control rooms, big studio, big live room. And we do live shows here in the studio. I think we talked about that the other night. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's about diversifying. It's about using the space for a lot of different things. And I find that, like, on a good day, working with other people gives me inspiration for my own artistic, journey. And there are some days that aren't as good. There are days where it feels more like work. But thankfully, those are fewer and farther between than the good ones. It's an interesting thing. If you're going to be a producer, engineer type, and be truly invested in the work you're doing, you're giving of that same part of your being that you would be devoting to your own work. I'm sure you found that yourself.
I've done it before. I did when I first started producing. I didn't know if I would get into it, and I found I got into it more. It was almost like all that passion was there for the other person, but something of like the negative part of the ego left the building. But Jono, this has been fantastic. Tell everyone where to find you.
Where can they find me? Well, you can look up my doings at my website, jonomanson.com. And, I get out and about now and again, so I'm about to do this East Coast gig and go play in Italy. And, I'm trying to get back to performing more, so hopefully hopefully I'll be somewhere near you, whoever you are, before too long.
I hope we do some more shows together soon, and maybe I'll come record at your studio. Jono Manson, you're the best, man.
Vicious agreement.
Yeah, let's text about it. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be right back with more after these words on TNT.